you've been lucky enough to go to a DP World Tour or PGA Tour or Major Championship, a professional event, wandered around the practice driving range, the short game area, or the putting green, one of the things you've probably noticed is that despite the fact that these are all the best players in the world, none of them stand and move in the same way when it comes to striking a golf ball. So what that tells you is that there's plenty of room for individual preference within the way you stand, the way you swing, the way you make your putting stroke, all those kind of factors. And it goes without saying that the drill and the exercise I'm about to talk through here is not perfect for everybody, but these are, I guess, some of my preferences of things I like to see, that if players move towards them, it can help to neutralise out quite a lot of other faults automatically. And I think when you think about the putting strokes and what it is, it's the smallest of all the movements. On a putt, the putter might move a couple of feet either side of the ball. It's the very smallest of all the swings that we make, and therefore I truly believe that everything we do at setup has a much greater weight in terms of the impact it then has on the stroke. We don't have a big arc, a sort of big movement to move the club through positions into. So getting into a great setup, whatever that might be for you, would be a really good way of actually neutralising a lot of the other factors within your technique. And as I said, this is something I quite like to try to gravitate players towards, particularly if they're a bit sloppy with consistency in their setup, particularly if they've got some misalignments that are impacting their angle of attack, the path, or control of the putter face. And I'm using a Vizio putting mirror here on the floor, which is a great device that gives you feedback on things like your head position and the putter face alignment. But I think you can use it for a little bit more than that. And one of the feels I like to have in my putting, is something I'll find a similar solution to for with players if I feel it's appropriate, would be to create a template so that every putting session you have has the same baseline at the start. You put in the foundations before you build the walls, and it's a cheesy cliche, but it really is true that if you can stand and start in the same place every time, it's going to be much harder for you to start to make different strokes every time. So just by being consistent with how we approach the golf ball, I think we increase the chance that the stroke we make after that becomes more consistent as well. So the way I like to use the mirror there will be, my first feeling really is that I'm going to try to point my big toes there towards the ends of the mirror. So that sets my stance width the same every time. It sets the golf ball just left of centre, which does a couple of things. One of being, it really helps me just to make sure the putter's moving up slightly as I hit the ball, which is one of the components of creating a good end-over-end roll. And we'll maybe talk a little bit more about some of the other bits of that in a different video. So once I've got my toes set there, as I'm looking over the mirror now, I can see the reflection of my head there. And my feeling, and again, I've got a little video where you can think about how you position your head and eyes to the golf ball to impact your aim. But for me, I've identified that if I can get my left eye in line with the golf ball here as I look north to south, but just inside it as I look east to west, that gives me the best chance of seeing directly down my target line. So as I can see in the mirror, as I'm looking down, my left eye is sitting just here on the mirror, dead in line with the golf ball, maybe an inch or so, half a ball width inside where the golf ball and the ball to target line actually are. So once I've got that there now, what I can start to see is that my shoulders are square, and back at my studio I use a camera that videos from above that's really good for showing if there's any tilts towards or away from the target of the spine, and they can be quite disruptive to the stroke as a whole. If I tilt my spine to the right there and then bend forwards, my torso is now actually aimed off to the right hand side of the target. So things like my path or the control of my face or movements I'm going to make in the downswing are now being impacted. And obviously the opposite is true if we go the other way. If I side bend to the left and then tilt forwards, I hit ahead of the golf ball, I might potentially hit down on it, I might have a left foot path, I might have to do things to compensate and try to manoeuvre the putter back into a usable position. So the feel there again for me would be every time I set up, this would be sort of my go-to drill at the start of a putting session if I'm practicing, would be get my feet set about the width of the mirror. So again, my feeling is big toes, it might be different for you. That could be something you could work on with your coach to really identify what that feels like. Putter in behind the ball, and then feeling there's right, left eye set, I can see my shoulders are good, so I know I'm not tilted one way or other. Into there, shoulders in, and then I'll just hit some putts from there. Just thinking about that idea of trying to get back to that set-up position every time. It goes without saying that if you want to be a consistent putter, you've got to try to do the same thing every time. And one of the easiest ways of making the stroke more consistent could be to make the setup more consistent. So maybe think about your setup. Have you considered being more consistent? Have you considered the factors we just discussed there? Do you try and put the ball in the same place every time? Do you try to make your stance the same every time? If not, just practicing those factors could have a really big impact when it comes to making a stroke out on the golf course. Give that a go. Be interested to hear how you get on with that. And like I say, consistency comes from trying to do the same thing every time. So if you can introduce some intent to be consistent within your practice, I think you should start to get some consistency when it comes to your outcomes.